The moon has become a graveyard for humanity's most sophisticated robots. Despite advances that would seem miraculous to Apollo engineers, computers millions of times more powerful, sensors capable of detecting objects inches apart at hundreds of feet, and artificial intelligence that can recognize faces in milliseconds, our success rate at lunar landing has plummeted. Since 2019, the failure roster reads like a technical tragedy. Israel's Bereshit, Japan's Hakuto-R missions, Russia's Luna 25, and others that came tantalizingly close only to crash at the final moment. The modern lunar paradox reveals an uncomfortable truth about technological progress. While we've gained computational sophistication, we've lost the engineering philosophy that made Apollo's primitive computers and simple radar systems nearly invincible. The Apollo guidance computer, with just 4 KB of RAM running at 2 MHz, successfully landed 6 crews on the moon. Today's missions, carrying processors thousands of times more powerful, regularly fail at the same task our parents' generation mastered with slide rules and determination. April 25, 2023 at 1640 UTC, Japan's iSpace Hakuto-R M1 lander was executing a perfect descent toward the moon's surface. Its radar altimeter was functioning flawlessly, reporting accurate distance measurements as the spacecraft descended through the critical final kilometers. But the lander's sophisticated software had detected what it interpreted as an abnormal value. The radar was reading 5 kilometers altitude, flying over a crater rim that the software expected to be much lower. The software made a fatal decision. It concluded the sensor was malfunctioning and rejected all further altitude data. For the next several minutes, Hakuto-R hovered at 5 kilometers altitude while its computer believed it was sitting safely on the lunar surface. The engines burned through every drop of fuel maintaining this impossible hover until the spacecraft finally fell like a stone into the crater below. The onboard software determined in error that the cause of this discrepancy was an abnormal value reported by the sensor, and thereafter, the altitude data measured by the sensor was intercepted, iSpace later reported. A working sensor was murdered by the very software designed to protect it. The failure reveals a disturbing trend. Modern spacecraft are failing not because their hardware is inadequate, but because their software is too sophisticated for its own good. The Apollo guidance computer, programmed by MIT's Don Iles, was designed with brilliant simplicity. Restart protection worked very well. In simulations, we sometimes pushed the restart button randomly, almost hoping for a failure that might lead us to one more bug. Invariably, once we got the restart protection working, operation continued seamlessly. Apollo engineers lived by a simple principle. Failure is not an option. So build 2 of everything. The lunar module carried not 1, but 2 completely independent guidance, navigation, and control systems. The Primary Guidance, Navigation, and Control System, or PGNS, and the Revolutionary Abort Guidance System, or AGS, developed by TRW as the world's first strapped-down inertial guidance system. The AGS existed due to a NASA requirement that at the moon there could not be a single-point failure in the guidance, navigation, and control system, explained Apollo engineer Al Jackson. This backup system was so reliable, it guided Apollo 13 most of the way home to Earth, conserving the command module's power and cooling water during their epic survival mission. Modern missions have abandoned this philosophy in favor of single, sophisticated systems. When Intuitive Machines' Odysseus attempted landing in February 2024, human error left the primary laser rangefinder disabled. Its safety switch had never been activated before launch. In a desperate hour-and-a-half scramble, engineers uploaded a software patch to use an experimental NASA payload as backup navigation. In normal software development for spacecraft, this is the kind of thing that would have taken a month, said Tim Crane, Odysseus's chief technology officer. Our team basically did that in an hour and a half. But the rushed patch contained a critical flaw. It failed to set the data valid flag, so the backup navigation data was provided but never processed by the landing algorithms. Odysseus survived, but landed on its side at 6 meters per second, 6 times faster than planned. The lunar environment poses challenges that seem almost designed to confound modern sensors. The moon's regolith carries electrostatic charges of several thousand volts, accumulated over billions of years of solar wind bombardment. This creates what Apollo 17's Eugene Cernan called the #1 environmental problem on the lunar surface: dust that clings to everything through electrostatic attraction, coating camera lenses, jamming mechanical systems, and creating respiratory hazards when it inevitably finds its way inside spacecraft. But the regolith is just one of the moon's hidden traps. Gravitational anomalies called mascons, massive concentrations of dense material buried beneath impact basins, create lumpy gravity that can deflect a spacecraft's trajectory by hundreds of meters. Early lunar orbiter missions experienced position errors 10 times the mission specification, with predicted landing areas becoming 100 times as large as those being carefully defined for reasons of safety. Apollo 16's sub-satellite, expected to orbit for 1.5 years, crashed after only 35 days, when mascon perturbations gradually degraded its orbit until it smashed into the lunar surface on May 29, 1972. The Apollo missions overcame these challenges through extensive orbital reconnaissance and human pilots capable of real-time decision-making, advantages that modern autonomous systems often lack. The moon's optical environment presents equally treacherous conditions, with an overall reflectance of just 7%, darker than charcoal. The lunar surface creates extreme contrast between brilliant peaks and cold black shadows. There's no atmospheric scattering to soften these transitions, creating lighting conditions that can fool even sophisticated computer vision systems. Intuitive Machine's second mission failed partly because problems with laser altimeters, along with lighting and terrain challenges, caused the lander to tip over during landing, with craters that appeared differently at lower altitudes than they did in reference images. Russia's Luna 25 mission ended in perhaps the most traumatic failure of the modern era. After a 50-year gap since Luna 24 in 1976, the mission represented Russia's attempt to reclaim its lunar heritage. On August 19, 2023, during what should have been a routine orbital adjustment, Luna 25's engine burn continued for 127 seconds instead of the planned 84. The root cause was both simple and tragic. The BIUSL accelerometer unit failed to activate due to conflicting command priorities in the software. Without feedback from the accelerometers, the spacecraft's control system couldn't determine when the required velocity change had been achieved. The engine burned until the spacecraft was thrown into a chaotic trajectory that ended in a high-speed impact 47 minutes later. Due to the possible entry into one data array of commands with different priorities for their execution by the device, Roscosmos later reported the system did not allow, when issuing a corrective pulse, to record the moment the required speed was reached and to timely turn off the spacecraft propulsion system. 50 years of accumulated space expertise was lost to a software configuration error. Yet recent missions have shown that the moon can still be conquered, but only by those who remember the lessons Apollo taught. India's Chandrayaan-3 succeeded on August 23, 2023, through a return to Apollo's philosophy of redundancy and systematic risk mitigation. ISRO engineers built multiple backup systems into every critical function, expanded the landing zone to provide operational flexibility, and improved structural design to handle landing velocities up to 3 meters per second. "We learned a lot from our failure and corrected it," said ISRO chairman S.S. Somanov, referring to lessons from Chandrayaan-2's crash in 2019. The mission carried dual altimetry systems, laser and microwave, with the microwave system's wider footprint allowing Chandrayaan-3 to better tolerate abrupt changes in altitude. AI-driven sensor fusion harmonized data from multiple sources but crucially maintained human oversight and abort capabilities. Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost achieved the first fully successful commercial lunar landing on March 2, 2025, operating for over 14 days on the lunar surface. The mission's computer vision system used dual navigation cameras for vision-based terrain relative navigation and hazard avoidance to measure the lander's position and identify craters, slopes, and rocks before selecting the final hazard-free target within the landing zone. The solutions emerging from lunar landing challenges are revolutionizing technology closer to home. NASA's Navigation Doppler LiDAR, developed for spacecraft navigation, has been licensed by Psionic LLC for autonomous vehicle applications. The system can distinguish between objects that are only several inches apart at distances of several hundred feet, and is virtually impossible to hack or jam. Advantages critical for both lunar landers and self-driving cars. Everything from autonomous air vehicles and self-driving cars to smart appliances need to be able to understand and interact with the world around them, explains Steve Sanford, Psionic's founder and former NASA engineering director. Sensor fusion, taking a number of different sensors and blending that data together, is where Doppler LiDAR fits in. The parallels run deeper than hardware. Both lunar landers and autonomous vehicles must make split-second decisions under uncertainty, using computer vision to navigate terrain filled with hazards and maintain safety margins that account for sensor failures and environmental surprises. The harsh constraints of space exploration are driving innovations that enhance terrestrial autonomous systems, while the commercial scale of automotive development is enabling cost reductions that benefit space applications. Neil Armstrong's manual takeover during Apollo 11's landing, with fuel running dangerously low and computer alarms screaming, represents something modern missions have largely abandoned: human judgment as the ultimate safety net. Armstrong flew over a boulder field and landed with an estimated 17 seconds of fuel remaining, demonstrating the irreplaceable value of adaptive intelligence in unpredictable situations. It's a brilliant surface in that sunlight. The horizon seems to be quite close to you because the curvature is so much more pronounced than here on Earth. It's an interesting place to be. I recommend it. Today's missions are rediscovering that recommendation requires more than technological sophistication. It demands the engineering wisdom that made Apollo's primitive systems nearly invincible. The moon remains humanity's greatest navigation challenge, but the path forward lies not in abandoning modern capabilities, but in wedding them to redundancy, testing, and human judgment that first conquered the magnificent desolation over 50 years ago. As Buzz Aldrin observed, that awe in me and in each of us must be the engine of future achievement. not a slow dimming light from a time once bright. The moon's merciless test continues, but with each failure comes knowledge, and with each success, proof that the ancient dream of lunar exploration remains humanity's greatest adventure in engineering resilience.